I don't think I even need to say this, but major spoiler warning. If you have not seen the first overdress episode yet, between the two previews that they did yesterday through the Japanese and English Vanguard channels, I recommend you skip on this video until it comes out on April 3rd. Otherwise, if you don't mind to be spoiled on the actual plot and what's happening in the anime, then go ahead and watch. I've now seen the episode twice, as most people have, I guess, and boy oh boy am I impressed. I think I got a comment the other day that was like, the fact that you're smiling in every single overdress video means that they're doing something good, and I was like, that's a good point. I'm gonna be honest with you, when it comes to Vanguard anime, I kind of tend to keep my expectations fairly low, and I'd rather be surprised rather than like be super hyped and then disappointed. It's also like when the anime season isn't as good, I'm usually not as like kind of like angry at it or like, you know, upset about it than some other people are. So, you know, with seasons like If, for example, I kind of walked in with zero expectations and I was pretty happy with it in the end because it was just like a fun little side anime. I didn't really expect anything from it and it still gave me something. Same goes for Shinamon, for example. I walked in with little to no expectations. At first I was like, oh, this kind of fan servicey, and then it suddenly turned into one of the best anime seasons we've had. So overall, I like to walk in with like no expectations and just like either be like, okay, this was nice, or just get my head blown off, basically, as it happened this time. So knowing the plotline that like Yuyu's sisters force him to cross-dress, I was really wondering how they're going to treat that, because I feel like, you know, there's good ways to treat it, there's bad ways to treat it, and especially if it's like kind of like used like a laughing stock, I really don't like that, because I think like internet culture and things like that is already pretty like volatile, if that's the right word, where, you know, people kind of jump on that and start like ridiculing it. I was kind of hoping that if it's going to be like treated properly, it would be treated, you know, as something like, maybe it's something that Yuyu, for example, as pictured, doesn't like, but maybe over the time kind of grows to develop this kind of understanding of like, oh, maybe it's nice to also be in this kind of getup. And it's all a lot about like gender identity and stuff, and I think that talking about gender identity in anime is like pretty difficult to begin with, but if they tackle it well, I think that's really nice, because that resonates with people really hard. But they basically treated it as like, you know, he's forced to like get dressed by his sisters. I think they pushed a little bit. Like when I was watching the first, like the very starting scene of it, I then watched it with my little brother as well, and you know, he found it funny, and I was like, you know, I'm also like, you know, finding it funny because it's you know, they're doing stuff with it, I guess, but it already felt like, ooh, like, am I supposed to show this to people and like go like, oh, here's a card game anime, and that's the first thing they see? It's a little bit like, so that was like my first kind of like, okay, kind of a reaction, I guess. But then they kind of build on that pretty interestingly, because they use Yuyu sort of like bullied into cross-dressing thing as a sort of vehicle to like then transition into Megumi's character, whereas Megumi is like, you know, she's all like very like pristine and like, you know, beautiful and pretty and ladylike and school, and then she like transforms completely when she actually goes to that like night circus thing, right, amusement park. And you know, Megumi every now and again mentions stuff like, oh, so this is what like a female friendship is, because it seems like most of her friends are dudes. You know, you have like Danji, you have Zaksa, you have basically everyone except for Tomari, and it seems like, you know, they spoke about Tomari in the live stream that she's like an eternal 17-year-old, which if you're familiar with like Idolmaster and stuff like that, eternal 17-year-old is usually used by, you know, characters that are like late 20s, early 30s, late 30s, that just don't want to actually like, you know, feel old or don't want to reveal their age. And from the way that Tomari acts, she felt like the most normal character out of all of them, to be honest, because, you know, she just works at a koban, at a police office essentially, and just, you know, works as a policewoman. And so I've also been told that like in maybe like, because I was kind of wondering, like, why is Megumi saying these things like, oh, you know, that she's like feeling like a female friendship with Yuyu, right, when she's friends with Tomari? But then I guess like Tomari probably has like such a big age gap, whether it's like 5 years or 10 years, but even like a 3-year age gap already, kind of, it's not so much that they're like close friends of like a similar age, but rather it's like Tomari is above her. She's like a senior to her, and therefore she, you know, she's not even in school anymore. She's a working citizen, and therefore that creates this kind of like ambiguous kind of relationship between them, probably, where Tomari is probably seen as like the adult, the sort of responsible adult of the group. You know, at the end we see that she's the one that breaks it to them, like, oh yeah, Yuyu's actually a boy, I got a call from his mom and things like that, and you know, has to like break it to them. Whereas, you know, for Megumi, that's probably like a barrier in terms of like getting close with her, right? And so that already takes me to the first thing, that it seems from the way they described this anime that it's going to be very much character focused, right? Every character is going to have their struggles. If you quickly like just pause and unpause the opening and look at it frame by frame in a lot of points, you see different things. Like there's like a funeral happening, there was like kids, like this kid studying in like a dark room and things like that. So there's probably a lot of like really like dark things in the background of each of the characters, and I feel like especially because the anime seasons are so short. We're only gonna get like, you know, every 3 episodes gonna be a different focus on a different character. Maybe even the endings will change, and this like first kind of arc is like Yuyu and Megumi focus. So then coming back to Yuyu, it's pretty interesting because I'm assuming that most of the first episode is told through Yuyu's perspective. And the reason why I say that is because by the time they go to the night amusement park, when Yuyu walks in and he sees like the action going on, and he's like, oh, this is like, oh, that Vanguard, that like card game that I've heard of, basically. And the way he sees everything, it's, you can kind of, if you listen closely, when he walks in, you hear Tomori in the background all the time. Like, Megumi's voice is a lot more in the foreground because she's walking with him and like talking to him all the time, whereas like Tomori's is in the back, right? And she's like, you know, she's just like shouting, you know, commentating. Her commentary, by the way, I love, actually like amazing. It's like basically like female Japanese Tasty Steve at this point is what it sounded like. That's how my friend Nega put it. And so I think that's how you should see this episode as well, is that it's viewed from Yuyu's eyes. And the reason why this, again, I'm gonna come back to this, is that when the fight scene happens, sure, it's like, it's like insanely animated. I'm gonna talk about the fight scene later on, like on its own, but part of the reason why I think the rules aren't explained, and like they don't even talk about like, you know, what riding is, what calling is, what attacking is, what guarding is, and they just go like, you know, ride, call, swing, swing, take a damage, guard, guard, you know, like that entire like motion of things, and then go into the huge fight animation is because Yuyu doesn't know the rules yet. Yuyu, like, imagine you bring over a friend to locals that's never played a card game before, and you're just planning to go to the movies later, but you want to like, you got time to kill, so you're like, oh, let's just go to locals. That friend doesn't know what the game is, but they can see that there's cards moving around, there's different illustrations, there's art, you know, they're clashing, somebody's winning, somebody's losing, they're talking about like all kinds of stuff. So from Yuyu's perspective, that's how they see it, right? They see it as like, oh, they're just like cards coming down, they're like swinging, attacking, and then it's like there's like this battlefield happening, right? And I think that when we go into the next episode, where I'm assuming Yuyu's gonna learn how to play Vanguard with the Dragon Empire deck, probably that's where we're gonna find out like, okay, here's what a call is, here's what a ride is, here's how you play the game. I saw some people complaining about the fight, you know, although most of us are like, oh my god, you know, but for some people they were like, oh, but they didn't really explain the card game, and that's fine. The other thing that I think we need to emphasize here is that this doesn't really feel like a card game anime. This feels like a fully fledged anime that uses a card game in it. I think the only other real like card game anime that's used this before, or like used this motif, is Wicross. I haven't finished Wicross, but I did start watching it, and I remember it was presented in a similar way. It was a character-driven story that used card games as a vehicle, much like how, you know, like Haikyuu uses volleyball as a vehicle, but it's still like based on the characters very much so, right? Coming back to the characters, I think it's also nice that they show Megumi as being able to like, you know, just being a kind of like rough, I guess. Like, she's not very much just like, you know, she lets her kind of like tomboyish side out when she's at the night amusement park, but even when she's in her high school uniform, she still has that kind of like tomboyish side of like, you know, the dude that was like hitting on them, he was just like, she was just like kicking him in the balls, you know, all those kind of things. And honestly, I think both her and Danji are just straight up dumb, but like in a good way, right? They're both just dumb. You know, she talks about Danji like he's like super smart and super amazing, like Aniki this, Aniki that, you know, Aniki, right? So, you know, she looks up to him a lot, and like he's big in many ways. We saw that line, don't worry. But Danji's clearly an idiot as well, and so I think she's an idiot as well, to be honest, but in a good way, right? In like a fun, innocent way, right? And then like there's still quite a few characters we don't know much about. Like Zakusa is like just kind of showed up, already a lot more chill than I expected. I expected them to be like the main villain of the series, but they seem to be really, really chill. Masanori as well is just, you know, Mr. Worldwide Pitbull, like just went like, oh, you got creamed, and that was his only line, I think. And then Toya was interesting because Toya is like presented as this like challenger that takes on Danji, and then like, you know, tries to stop Danji's like win streak, but just gets absolutely blasted, and then like kind of learns a lesson and then, you know, walks off. But Danji is of course kind of like the main focus of this first episode, right? A lot of people are like, yeah, he's cool, he's great, he's tall, you know, but he's also like, during the live stream right before, Onoyu, his voice actor, was like, Danji, you can't tell when he's serious or when he's messing around. He's like, oh, that's just like me, you know? So he's like, and you really can't. You can't tell when he's serious or when he's messing around, especially in that confrontation with a dude hitting on them, right? You know, just like smashes a bottle and then like starts tossing shit aside, and it's like, you know, he's just doing stuff. and he's like both being serious and like weird and like silly, I guess, at the same time. But in terms of characters, I really like everyone so far. That's, you know, there's like scaling differences in how much we know about each character, but it's already been presented pretty well from the first episode already. So I really like that, to be honest. I like how well character driven it is. The music, god, the BGM is fantastic. Just the regular soundtrack is already good. Opening is a banger. Ending, after listening to it 2 times, I was like, actually, this is pretty nice. It's a nice little like laid back little bop, you know, here and there. I like that they're doing the card preview at the end. It reminds me of, I guess Vanguard's been doing it for a while in the Shinamon series. DifferentFight did it as well. Shadowverse does it as well. I think most card game anime just need to get in the habit of like doing card introductions at the end. I like that Minivan is like the art director, I guess, or just the artist behind those card previews at the end, which is really nice. And overall, like everything else is quite good. Like the world building is nice. They don't expand on it too much, but they show a bit of the map here and there, and then they kind of, you know, highlight this night amusement park. From the opening, it looks like it's gonna like catch on fire or something in the future. I feel like something bad is gonna happen to it because they treasure it so much, you know. It's such a treasured place for them, and in the opening there's like Yuyu and Megumi crying, and there's like fire on the side, so I'm pretty, like, if I feel like that amusement park is gonna actually like catch on fire at some point. But of course, I think the main highlight for a lot of us, and the scene that like I wish I could rewatch a billion times, is the fight. The fight just went super Sakuga out of nowhere. I showed it to my artist friend Cortrex, and he was like, bro, did they get like every Sakuga animator from every single studio to work on this? Like, it looks so insane. The transition, the details, the skulls of Diablos, right? Like this skull on his chest, this thing just shows up randomly, just like as Danji starts running, it like flares up behind him. As the football gets kicked into Bastion, I keep pronouncing it Bastion, like it doesn't really matter, but it explodes into that skull. And at the end, when Bastion explodes in the background, it also forms a skull in the back. You know, cool guys don't look at explosions, etc. But it's so cool. Like, that entire fight scene was so nice. And again, I'm coming back to the point that it looks like Yuyu is looking into it. That's why it's like so action-packed and there's not much like card explanations. But if you really break it apart, there is a fight happening because they comment on the state of the field. We saw the fight until now as well. Like, they were calling stuff, attacking, you know, pushing, guarding. You can calculate how much damage they're at. And then at that point, when it goes into that super like Sakuga animated part, it's like you essentially have, I think he's like, Danji deals like 2 damage or something, and then at one point Bastion comes back and like does like the Excalibur thing, and like then you see that Bruce doesn't actually take the damage, so that's probably a PG. And then he like actually like finishes him off probably with like a big final rush. And so it's so good. Like, that fight scene is just ridiculously insane and just so well crafted. And I'm glad that this anime season is so short. I'm glad it's only 12 episodes with like a core break and then another 12 episodes after. And I hope it continues later on as well, you know, because at this rate it's going to be like, what, 3 months of season 1, then 3 months break, and then 3 months of another season. So probably then another 3 months break, and then hopefully a season 3 or something like that. Because this is so good. Like, it's genuinely really amazing, and I'm just impressed by everything so far. Some people said the pacing felt a bit quick, but I think honestly, like, watching the second time, it felt pretty okay. I feel like they couldn't have progressed any slower without making it feel like they're dragging something on. It felt like it just moved from plot point to plot point while being able to introduce like as many characters as possible, and so for that reason I quite liked it. I'm just curious how they're going to do it in the future as well, because they have quite a lot of, they have like 7 main characters, right, to focus on, and only 12 episodes at the start, so I feel like somebody's probably not going to get as much kind of like focus. Danji feels like it doesn't really have much going on in the background, so maybe he's just like the glue that, you know, holds the whole group together. You know, he's just like the big brother to everyone, so maybe he won't get as much focus. But overall, man, I am really impressed. Like, I honestly, when the fight scene happened and the background music had a vocal BGM, I was like, is this Grand Blue Fantasy? Am I hearing, ah, hell, you know, like, what is going on here? This is so high quality. It's like the level of love put into this, I think, made me feel like I am so glad that I've like dedicated my life to this game, right? It made me feel so glad that like this is the series I'm passionate for. It felt like in the past maybe like our anime wasn't as great, or like we didn't get the same kind of flair that other series had, but with this just like showed the amazingness of Vanguard. This showed like, it's like, this feels like an anime that you can basically show to anyone at this point as well, or especially to, like, to anime fans, because the important point is, right, until now it's been like this card game niche. So it's like if you like Yu-Gi-Oh, you like Duel Masters, you like Battle Spirits, you can go like, oh, I can watch Vanguard now because you're already in that niche of watching card game anime. But this is an anime that can show to anyone that likes anime because it stands on its own. It doesn't rely on the cards, it relies on the characters, right? It's the characters that push the story so far and bring out the hype as well. And then you see the cool cards and like them clashing and fighting, and then you're like, I want more of that. Can I get that? And then you find out about the card game and voila, there you go. Another new player has joined the fray. And I think that's the way they should be kind of selling the game as well, is that you have an amazing, like, you get people glued to the characters. Like, there's so many people now, like, the only starter deck that went out of stock yesterday on many websites was the Danji one, because people saw Danji play and they were like, this is so dope, I want to have this. Like, people want to own it because it looks so cool, because it's so presented so damn well in the anime, and that's how you sell it. You don't have to go like, you know, I will ride into this and use the ability, and the ability is really good, now buy this card. They didn't do that at all. They just showed a kick-ass animation of the unit of Bruce from the damn starter deck, and that was it. That's all it took to actually sell people on it and make them buy the deck box, the sleeves, whatever. That's how you do it, and Bushiroad finally got it. God, just bless overdress, man. Overdress is looking amazing. Everything about it, from cards to anime to promotion to the love Bushiroad is putting into it, it just feels amazing. I cannot get enough of this, and I'm so damn glad to be seeing this much love being given to the franchise right now. So yeah, that was my discussion of episode 1. I don't know how anime YouTubers do it, and I'm not an anime YouTuber, so I just wanted to like get my unstructured thoughts out there into the wild and just tell you about, you know, my emotions and my feelings about this first episode. I cannot wait. April 3rd is the official release date, and then April 10th, I guess, will be episode 2, so we still have like a good few weeks to wait, but then we're going to be like 1 week away from the release date of the actual booster set, so that's going to be really hype as well. But anyway, that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.